When I got home from dinner, my safe was wide open. Empty. Mom walked in smirking. Relax, your sister's tuition was due. Dad added, you'll thank us later. I nodded, we'll see who thanks who. The next day my sister was shouting, Mom was crying, and Dad was on his knees begging me not to do it. My safe was empty. $8,300. Gone. Not misplaced, not borrowed, not moved. Gone. I kept it behind the bookshelf in my bedroom, screwed into the floor, locked with a 6-digit code I never told anyone. I opened it every couple of weeks just to count. I liked seeing the progress. I liked seeing what 2 years of nonstop work looked like in one place. That night I came home and did it like usual. Slid the shelf, entered the code, pulled the door. It swung open without resistance. I knew instantly something was wrong. It was too light. Too easy. The safe was wide open. And inside, nothing. Not even the empty envelopes I kept the cash in. I froze. I didn't panic. I didn't yell. I just stood there in this weird, still moment, like maybe if I waited long enough the cash would reappear. I'd been saving that money since my junior year. I took every babysitting job I could get. I tutored annoying kids whose parents threw cash at me just to pass them. I worked at the diner through holidays, skipped spring break trips, ignored every impulse to spend. All for that car. I had a list. I'd done the research. I was 2 weeks away from buying it. And now it was gone. I was still staring at the empty safe when I heard someone come up the stairs. My mom walked into my room without knocking. She saw the safe open, barely glanced at me, and said it like it was a joke. Relax. Your sister's tuition was due. Then she took a sip of tea and walked out. I didn't move. A few seconds later, Dad came by. He didn't even look bothered. Just nodded at the safe like it was all part of the plan. You'll thank us later. College is expensive. And then he left too. No apology. No conversation. Just a casual theft, as if they'd borrowed a charger or eaten my leftovers. I couldn't speak. They had no idea what they'd done. They didn't think it was stealing. They didn't think it needed discussion. To them it was simple. Sophie needed the money more than I did. Sophie had tuition due. Sophie needed help. So naturally take from Catherine. The responsible one. The quiet one. The one who never asks for anything. They didn't think I'd fight it. They were wrong. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed staring at the safe for hours. Not because I was shocked they'd chosen Sophie over me. That part wasn't new. What shocked me was how confidently they did it. Like they were entitled to everything I had worked for. Like it wasn't even worth discussing. That's when I realized something. If they didn't see it as wrong, they wouldn't give it back. They thought this was just a little family sacrifice. They thought I'd swallow it like I always had. So the next morning I walked into the police station. I filed a report. Name, address, value of loss. Suspects, my parents. And I walked out like it was just another Tuesday. Because if they wanted to treat me like a stranger, I'd treat them like criminals. The officer at the front desk asked me who took the money. I said, my parents. He paused for a second like maybe he misheard me. Then he asked, are you sure you want to go through with this? I didn't hesitate. I said yes. It wasn't a scene. No handcuffs, no alarms. Just paperwork. Quiet, methodical routine. Like this kind of thing happens all the time. The detective who took my statement didn't ask why they did it. He asked if I had proof the money was mine. I showed him the records. Deposits. Cash withdrawals. Photos I'd taken every month after counting it. Notes with dates and totals. A folder full of bank receipts. He nodded and typed it all up. By the time I left the station, the sun was barely up. I got home around 7:30 and made coffee like nothing had happened. The house was quiet. Mom was already at work. Dad had taken Sophie to her morning class. I sat at the kitchen table, drank my coffee slowly and waited. At 2:47 p.m. my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. Then again. Then again. 6 calls in 15 minutes. Then a text from Dad. What the hell did you do? I didn't reply. At 4:30 I heard the front door slam. I stayed in my room. I heard them coming down the hall, both of them. Then the door flung open without a knock. You called the police on us? I didn't answer. Mom was pacing. Dad looked like he couldn't believe it. They said things like, you're overreacting, and it's still in the family, and it was just for your sister. And then the best part. You would really ruin your parents over some cash? That's when I finally spoke. I said, "Give it back and I'll withdraw the report." They looked at me like I was holding them hostage. Dad said they didn't have it anymore. It went straight to Sophie's tuition account. Mom started trying to guilt-trip me, saying how hard things had been lately, how Sophie was trying her best, how I should be proud to help her succeed. I said I didn't care. I said I didn't agree. I said they had no right. That's when the mood shifted. They weren't angry anymore, they were scared. Because they knew I wasn't bluffing. They knew I'd follow it through. Dad tried to play peacemaker. He said it was just a misunderstanding. That we were a family. That we could fix this. I told them they had 48 hours. After that, I wouldn't stop anything. Then I walked out and left them standing there in my room. That night, Sophie showed up. She didn't knock either. She barged in like she lived there. Started yelling before the door even shut behind her. "You're out of your mind. Who reports their own parents?" I didn't say anything. Then she said, "You're seriously choosing a car over your family?" I told her it wasn't about the car. It was about respect. Consent. Boundaries. She rolled her eyes and said, "You've always been dramatic." I said, "You've always expected everyone to clean up your mess." That shut her up for a second. I told her the same thing I told them. "Return the money and it ends here. Don't and I'll see you all in court." She stormed out. The next morning, Mom was crying in the kitchen. Sophie was on the phone yelling. Dad was pacing in the yard like he was on trial. I poured myself a cup of coffee, walked past them and said nothing. They knew I was serious now. And they had no idea what to do about it. By the next day, word had gotten out. Not to the neighbors or anything like that. My family keeps things quiet, but within the circle. Grandma called first. Then Aunt Denise. Then Uncle Rick. All of them basically asking the same thing in different tones. "What happened? Why didn't you talk to them first? Do you really want to involve the police?" I told them all the same thing. They stole from me. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a family dispute. It was theft. No one wanted to say the word out loud. Not once. Everyone danced around it. Even Grandma, who I love more than anyone, asked, "Are you sure you want to destroy the family over this?" I asked her something back. "Would you say that if it was your savings?" She didn't answer. By that evening, Dad knocked on my door. First time in 2 days, he asked before entering. He came in slowly holding a check. Said it was for part of the money, $3,000. I looked at it. No apology. No plan to pay the rest. Just $3,000 and a weak smile. I handed it back. I said, "All or nothing." That's when the begging started. He told me about Sophie's failing grades, how she'd lose her place if they didn't pay tuition. How they didn't have time to figure something else out. How they were under pressure. I listened. But I didn't move. He said, "We're your parents." I said, "You should have acted like it." The next day was worse. Sophie had posted some cryptic rant on Instagram. Something about betrayal, selfish people, fake family. A few people messaged me about it. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Mom spent the whole morning crying. Like full-blown, sobbing in the kitchen, dropping dishes, acting like I'd just handed out a death sentence. She kept saying things like, "What kind of daughter does this?" And "You're ruining your own blood." I ignored her. I packed a bag and left for Amanda's. I needed a break from the noise. But I didn't stop the process. The detective called. Asked if I was still moving forward. I said yes. They tried something new after that. They sent Grandma. She showed up to Amanda's house like she was staging an intervention. Sat across from me with tears in her eyes. Told me she understood why I was upset. But then she said something I'll never forget. "They're your family, sweetheart. You can't take them to court." I said, "They weren't family when they took the money." She sat in silence after that. I could see the heartbreak on her face. Not because I was wrong, but because she knew I was right. I told her, "You raised me to be strong. I'm being strong now. I just wish they didn't make me." She nodded once. That was the last time we talked about it. 2 days later, I got a call from my lawyer. My parents had been officially notified. The case was moving forward. No more begging. No more guilt trips. Just a court date. And from that moment on, I was all in. The day they got served was the first day they stopped calling. No texts. No visits. Nothing. Just silence. I expected some kind of explosion. Screaming, threats, a last-ditch guilt trip. But it didn't come. Not right away. Instead, Sophie posted a photo on Instagram with the caption, "You can't choose your family, but you can learn who never had your back." A few of her friends unfollowed me. I didn't care. I'd already deleted most of them anyway. The quiet didn't last long. 3 days later, I got a letter in the mail from a family lawyer. My parents had hired someone. Their response was full of dramatic phrasing. Misunderstanding. Family matter. Regretful situation. But nowhere in there did they deny taking the money. They just didn't think it counted as stealing. Their lawyer actually had the nerve to write, "Given the close relationship between parties, a civil resolution without legal action is strongly advised." I had my own lawyer respond. We included all my documentation. The receipts, the photos, the safe's purchase, my proof of income, my savings logs. A full 2 years of building that fund, down to the last dollar. We also made one thing very clear. I was willing to settle, but only if the full amount was repaid. In full. No excuses. No payment plans. No, we can't right now. They had 7 days. By the 5th day I got a call from my mom. I let it ring out. The voicemail was long. Lots of tears, lots of, "I never thought you'd actually do this." I didn't listen to the whole thing. Then it got worse. Sophie showed up at my job. Not a call. Not a text. She just walked in while I was on a break, arms crossed, eyes already red. She said I was selfish. Said I was humiliating the whole family. "You're really dragging our parents into court like they're strangers?" I looked her straight in the eye and said, "They are strangers. They took from me like one." She told me I'd regret it. That someday I'd realize I destroyed the family. I told her the family was already gone. The day they decided her future was worth more than mine. She left without another word. That night Dad texted me. One sentence, "You're not our daughter anymore." I read it twice. Then I blocked his number. The case was set for hearing. Small claims court. Nothing fancy, no jury, just a judge and a file full of documents. The day of the hearing I walked in alone. I didn't ask anyone to come. I didn't want anyone there. They showed up 5 minutes before it started, looking like they were attending a funeral. Mom wouldn't look at me. Dad sat stiff in his chair. Sophie didn't come at all. The judge went through everything calmly. Asked a few questions. Asked them if they admitted to taking the money. Dad said yes. Then the judge asked if they had permission. Dad hesitated. Then he said, "We assumed she'd be okay with it." The judge didn't even blink. He ruled in my favor. Full repayment. 30 days to deliver the full amount or face further action. No drama. No gasps. Just a quiet, legal sentence. I walked out. They didn't follow. I got a check 3 weeks later. Full amount. No note. No apology. Just money in an envelope dropped in the mailbox like it never happened. They haven't spoken to me since. The day the check cleared, I sat in my car and stared at the balance for a while. I should have felt something, relief, satisfaction, maybe even pride. But I didn't feel much of anything. Just done. They paid because they had to, not because they were sorry. I knew that. If the judge hadn't ordered it, they would have let me eat the loss and sleep just fine at night. And honestly, I think that was the part that stayed with me the most. Not the money, not the court, but how easily they betrayed me and how little it meant to them afterward. It wasn't even about Sophie. Not really. It was about how disposable I was. How easy it was to strip my work, my plans, my independence and call it a favor to someone else. Sophie still hadn't spoken to me. She'd blocked me after the court date and started telling people I was unstable, that I'd turned on the family over a misunderstanding. No one asked for my side. No one ever does when someone cries louder than you. Grandma tried. She called and said she was proud of me, not for what I did but for standing up for myself. Then she asked if I'd be willing to talk to them again. I said no. He tried a second time a week later. Said Mom hadn't stopped crying, that Dad hadn't smiled in days. Said family needed healing. I said, they chose who they cared about. I'm not in that group. She didn't push again after that. The silence stretched on for months. No birthdays, no holidays, no small talk. I heard from a cousin that Sophie had dropped 2 classes and blamed stress from family drama. I didn't laugh. I just nodded and moved on. Amanda asked me once if I ever regretted it, taking it that far. I told her the truth, not for 1 second. If I hadn't done it, they would have done it again. Maybe not with money, maybe not with a safe, but in some other way. They keep taking and expect me to understand. I finally drew a line and they finally saw what I looked like when I said no. I bought the car a few weeks later. Nothing flashy. Just what I'd planned on buying before they tore through my savings. I drove past the house once. Just once. Lights were on. Sophie's car was in the driveway. Kept going. They turned their backs on me. That was their choice. I gave them the option to make it right and they refused until the law forced them to. They didn't lose me because of the police report. They lost me the second they opened that safe. It's been nearly a year since the court case. People still ask sometimes, quietly like they're afraid to bring it up, if I've talked to my family. My answer's always the same. No. Not once. No calls. No visits. No random texts trying to patch things up. Nothing. And I'm fine with that. I moved out 3 months after the whole thing ended. Got a small apartment about 30 minutes away. Not far but far enough. Just me and my space. My car parked downstairs, the one I bought with my own money, twice. I still think about that night sometimes. The open safe, the empty space, my mom walking in like nothing had happened. That look on her face like I should have been proud to be used. I replay it now and then just to remind myself that I wasn't crazy. Because there are still people who act like I overreacted. Sophie's friends. My aunt. A cousin or two who still drop hints about mending fences. They don't say it outright but I can hear it in the way they talk. Like I ruined a perfectly good family over a few $1,000s. They don't understand it wasn't just the money. It was the silence before they did it. The entitlement. The way they didn't even bother to ask. The way they stood there afterward and tried to make me feel like I owed it to them. If I let it go, I'd be confirming what they believed. That I was the one who should always give, always adjust, always sacrifice. But I didn't. I pushed back. And they hated that more than anything. They didn't lose a daughter. They lost a target. Sometimes Amanda and I joke about it, how wild the whole thing was, how it still sounds like something you'd read online and assume was fake. But then she gets quiet and says she's proud of me. Not for winning. But for refusing to be walked over. The truth is I didn't win anything. I didn't get an apology. I didn't get justice. All I got was my money back. And a clean break. But that was enough. I rebuilt from there. Got my car. Got my space. Started saying no more often to more people. Cut off anyone who treated me like a backup plan. I still think about Grandma sometimes. She was the only one who tried to understand both sides, and she didn't deserve to be caught in the middle. But even she eventually stopped asking me to forgive them. I think deep down she knew they'd made their choice. I made mine too. And if I had to go back, I'd do it all again the exact same way. Because I didn't destroy the family. They did. I just finally stopped pretending it wasn't broken.